Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so let's get started. So output reports এর কিছু design principle নিয়ে আমরা কথা বলবো এই সেশনে. It's very similar to some of the things that we discussed about input design and prototyping, right? Uh, First and foremost, the different types of outputs that or output reports that you'd have to create based on what type of outputs there are, internal outputs or external outputs. So external outputs নিয়ে আমরা actually deal করবো না because আমাদের যে systemটা it's very much internal to the university and the university only. So it's not ever going to leave the organization. You will see very soon what external outputs are. Basically, outputs or data that leave the organization. But we are not going to be working with that for our project. We will be working with only internal outputs. So no need to worry about that. And on that note, we'll also be only be working with detailed reports and summary reports. Exception report নিয়ে আমাদের কাজ করতে হবে না. Exception. So what is the difference? Detailed report হচ্ছে গিয়ে those reports where there is little to no filtering. That is, most of the data is presented as it is. And summary reports are those which give us an idea of the summary, right, of the certain of a certain state of the organization and so on. So you can think of it in the sense that summary report is information present to the user, and detailed report is very close to raw data. It's not raw data; it's still information, but with little filtering, so lesser meaning or less meaningful than summary report. But we'll have to deal with both categories: the output tables and charts that we have. All the charts, by the way, are summary reports, obviously, but some of the tables, one or two of the tables at least, I think, are detailed reports. And exception reports, those are to give us an idea, to give the users of the organization some idea about any um, circumstances, any exceptional circumstances. Let's say, for example, students who have failed to register for a certain course yet, let's say, or students who have um, consistently had grades below a certain level, and situations like that which need further attention. Right? So we won't be handling those situations at all. We'll be only handling output reports that fall under these two categories, mostly the summary reports. All right. So another category is external outputs. Just like the internal output, you've got external outputs as well. Basically, external outputs are those which leave the organization. Once again, for our project, it's not applicable because all of our data will be kept or controlled within the university. It's never going to leave the university. So we're not going to handle these things. However, what are some examples of these, let's say? For example, if you were to go to some store and order some stuff and get those stuff, and then you'd be presented with an order receipt, right? What is that order receipt? That's an output that's leaving the organization with you, the customer or the user. So that's an external output, right? So even for our university example as well, for example, whatever you get out of our Iris, right? The data that you see in Iris, the output reports that you get, you, the student users get in Iris, all of those are external outputs because they're leaving the organization. They're not internal to the organization. And all the data that, all the output reports that are there for users within the organization, that is users employed by the organization, are all internal outputs, right? So in terms of external outputs, another thing that we need to think about are turnaround cases. If there are any turnaround documents, there may be some situations. So it's not always going to be the case that the entire external output just leave the organization and never come back. Sometimes some field or some combination of fields in the external output must be fed back into the system as an input to generate another, let's say, to do the task of another process. Right? For example, let's say when you pay for a certain course, right? So you go to the bank and make the payment, and then what do you do? What do you do with the receipt? Right now, in this online mode of education, how do you register for a course? So once you get a form outside, printed out of the system, or the system allows you to register for a course and gives you the details of the course and the amount due and all that, that's all of that's an output, right? The amount that's due and everything presented in a report format is an output. It's an external output that's leaving the organization. However, once you make the payment, then you're going to enter some data into the system based off of that external output. So that's turnaround document, right? So for the project, you don't have to worry about any of these cases because we're not going to be handling any of these. We're not going to be generating outputs that fall under this category. Once again, we'll be generating outputs only that fall under the internal output category. even then, even there, no cases of exception reports as far as I can remember. Now, some of the methods for implementing our output system or generating our output reports, much like the case of our input forms as well, we've got implementation methods here. So you could have printed output, you could have screen outputs. The other ones are not applicable for our project. Once again, এগুলো কোনো কিছু আমাদের চিন্তা করতে হবে না. Well, you could think about email if the user requests that a certain output be sent via email. You could think about that, but printed output and screen output. So printed output বলতে কি আমি বুঝাতে চাচ্ছি যে আমাদের আউটপুট যেগুলো আছে প্রজেক্টের ওগুলো প্রিন্ট করে দেখাতে হবে না, বাট অপশনটা থাকা উচিত, ঠিক আছে? স্ক্রিন আউটপুট তো ডিফল্ট, বাই ডিফল্ট এটা তো দেখাতে হবে, right? It's a web application. Obviously, the screen output will be there. So everything the user will see as an output report will be displayed to them as a screen output. Apart from that, let's say at some point, somewhere you use a metaphor for printing out the output. You just have that option available for the user so that if they want to, they can print the output, let's say, all right?
Ma'am?
Yes.
Any browser has a print option, right?
Yeah.
All browsers have a print option anyway.
Yes, definitely. All browsers have that, but that's a part of the browser, not your system, not your interface, is it? So let's say, for example, ধরো তুমি বিমান বাংলাদেশের জন্য কোন একটা টিকেট বুক করলা, পে করলা টিকেটের জন্য. You see that there's a screen output that's displayed to you, and within the interface you have an option of sending that email to yourself via email. Send myself a copy via email and print out the output, ঠিক আছে? So send myself a copy of this via email or something like that, send an email or whatever option that is. What will it do? Simply screen যে আউটপুটটা আছে ওই আউটপুটটা হচ্ছে কি আমাকে ইমেইলে পাঠিয়ে দিবে. আর প্রিন্ট যেটা ওটা কি করবে, ওটা হচ্ছে তোমার ব্রাউজারে আরেকটা ট্যাব খুলে হচ্ছে কি প্রিন্টের যে ভিউটা, জাস্ট ভিউটা দেখাবে যে জিনিসটা প্রিন্ট করা হবে. কেন এটার কথা বলছি? হ্যাঁ, ব্রাউজারে থাকতে পারে, বাট to make this clear to the user what will be printed, কারণ সিস্টেমে তো তোমার মানে স্ক্রিনে তো স্ক্রিন আউটপুটের বাইরে আরো অন্যান্য অনেক কিছু থাকতে পারে, তাই না? তোমার টিকেটের ডিটেইলস এর সাথে উপরে নিচে আরো অনেক কিছু থাকতে পারে. So but if the user wants to print something out, specifically what will be printed, এই জিনিসটা usually দেখানো হয় either using a pop-up or by opening a new tab, all right? So নতুন ট্যাবে হচ্ছে কি just exactly কোন জিনিসটা প্রিন্ট করা হবে ওই ভিউটা দেখানো হয়. So same thing for you guys as well. You don't have to connect to some printer or এই ধরনের কোনো mechanism রাখা লাগবে না, but at least optionটা রাখা. Default এটা তো থাকবে, screen output তো থাকবে, and then if you have time, then you can have the option of printing the output or sending an email to themselves, right? Because that's applicable for our users. It makes sense for the users to print out these outputs for further analysis and so on, or send email to someone, all right? Once again, emailটা সে নিজেকেও পাঠাতে পারে, অন্য কাউকেও পাঠাতে পারে, as long as that person they're sending the email to has access to the information, right? Let's say for example আমরা চেক করে নিব যে ইমেল অ্যাড্রেসটা হচ্ছে গিয়ে IUB সামথিং কিনা, ঠিক আছে? এরকম কোন একটা কিছু চেক করতে পারলাম, আরো ফার্দার কিছু কনস্ট্রেন্ট প্লেস করতে পারি. লেটস সে ক্লায়েন্ট অর্গানাইজেশন আমাকে দিয়ে দিল একটা লিস্ট যে এই ইমেল অ্যাড্রেস ছাড়া বাকি অন্য কোনো ইমেল অ্যাড্রেসে এই ডেটাগুলো পাঠানো যাবে না, ঠিক আছে? সো আমি ওই চেকটা করলাম, যখন একটা ইমেল অ্যাড্রেস দিবে ওই ইমেল অ্যাড্রেসটা কি ওই লিস্ট থেকে আসছে কিনা এই জিনিসগুলো. বাট ওয়ান্স अगेन অপশনাল, অলরাইট? ইউ ডোন্ট হ্যাভ টু worry too much about these things. I'm just saying in case you need that in future, or you would want to implement it once you have some time, let's say. So yeah, so at least screen output এর সাথে at least screen output এর সাথে at least email সব সময় থাকে, আর printed output as well in cases where it's applicable, all right? So what it does is, once again, email হচ্ছে গিয়ে either to me or whichever email address I enter, ওখানে হচ্ছে গিয়ে আমার screen outputটা just mail করে দিবে, and printed output যেটা করবে just in a separate tab or via pop-up or something like that, আমার actual print হবে কোন পার্টটুকু এটা হচ্ছে কি আলাদা করে ইউজারকে ফোকাস করে দেখাবে, and the user can obviously print that out, all right? So have those things in your head while you're working on the project. So let's say, for example, once you're done with the major implementations by the 14th, hopefully, then you can think about these things. যে জিনিসগুলো আমি কিভাবে রাখতে পারি আর রিফাইন কিভাবে করতে পারি. 14th এর মধ্যে মেবি তোমার চিন্তা করার দরকার নেই যে প্রিন্টার অপশন কি থাকবে নাকি ইমেল অপশনে কি থাকবে নাকি, এটা তোমার চিন্তা করতে হবে না before the 14th. Think about the major tasks, all right? 14th এর পরে গিয়ে you can think about যে ওকে আমি এগুলো আরো কিছু ফ্যান্সি অপশনস রাখবো কিনা and so on, right? আচ্ছা, the charts, some of the types of charts that you could see in the output. For our project, I don't think there is any bar chart from my recalling. Definitely there are line charts, there are area charts, and there are column charts as well, I think, but bar chart chilo na. Anyway, all of these charts that you can see for presenting summary reports, all right? So all charts that we see fall in the summary report category. So also, there are some other categories of charts as well. I don't think you have a donut chart, not a radar chart either, and also, what do you call this one again? I can't remember the name of this chart. Right, scatter chart, right, scatter chart. Yeah, so hey, scatter chart, right. So pie chart maybe তোমাদের আছে, I'm not sure. হ্যাঁ ছিল হ্যাঁ, pie chart ছিল, donut chart, radar chart, scatter chart নেই. However, যেটা নেই ওটা নিয়ে তোমাদের worry করতে হবে না. For this semester, we've kept it simple. Just line chart, area chart, or column chart, and pie chart আছে. So figure out what these things are, what they're used for, and how you're going to implement them. So কোনো একটা library যেটাতে হচ্ছে গিয়ে line chart, area chart, column chart, আর pie chart. এই চারটা chart at least easily implement করা যায়. কারণ remember আমাদের data কিন্তু আমরা পাবো হচ্ছে গিয়ে in the data structure that we are using, ঠিক আছে? So logical একটা data structure follow করে আমরা data return পাবো। সেটা কিন্তু চার্ট আকারে automatically তো আমাদের কাছে আসবে না। Assuming that you're successful in establishing the connection between your backend and your database, and you when you fetch for something from your backend, you get the data back and all that. ওই ডেটাটাকে তো একটা presentable way তে user-কে দেখাতে হবে। What is that presentable way? Displaying in terms of a line chart or an area chart or a column chart or a pie chart in that way, ঠিক আছে? So figure out how you're going to do that using these charts. বাকিগুলো নিয়ে you don't have to worry. No need to worry about bar chart, donut chart, radar chart, or scatter charts. All right. So yeah. Okay then. All right. So this is something that used to be used in ages and ages back. All right, before the idea of pixel came in and all that. So it হচ্ছে গিয়ে spacing to figure out করার জন্য যে in our output report that we are going to generate, what should be the spacing, কতটুকু মানে for keeping in mind the readability of the output report, how easy it is for the user to capture information from the output report and all that. So that, as you can see, all the spacings are of exact same size, and all the characters or everything is contained within a certain cell size, let's say. All right, but this is backdated just to show you something from, let's say, the museum or the archives or whatever. I mean, I myself have never seen this thing used ever. So তোমাদের তো প্রশ্নই উঠছে না. So what we use is you could use modern case tool. I haven't used modern case tool either. This is probably for designers, not even the front-end designers, it's just purely designers. Or যারা হচ্ছে গিয়ে আমাদের, let's say, what the interface will look like, people who are going to design that without any involvement of the code at all. So maybe they could use something like that. আমরা যেটা usually করে থাকি সেটা হচ্ছে আমরা ওই যেটা বললাম পোস্টম্যান দিয়ে হচ্ছে ডেটা পাচ্ছি কিনা আদৌ এটা দেখি, and then once we get the data, then we map it with using whatever templating engine the framework comes with. All right, framework the templating engine দিয়ে আসে directly ওটা দিয়ে দেখি. But if you want to do it, let's say, the right way, you can do the prototyping and design using some sort of modern case tool, or you can use Adobe for that, or Photoshop for that, or InVision for that. ঠিক আছে? Adobe, Photoshop, InVision, even those are used for output design and not prototyping, output design. Prototyping এর জন্য কিন্তু things like the Postman, the DBMS, those are for prototyping. That is the data, whether you get the data or not. And then for the design bit, you can use case tools, you can use under this category you could think of, let's say, Adobe use করতে পারো, অথবা Photoshop, অথবা InVision, এগুলো কোনো একটা কিছু use করতে পারো designer জন্য just. And then you map whatever you get back from the database, you map that into your output, all right? Using the templating engine, your framework comes up. Okay, right then. Some of the guidelines that we should follow whenever we are designing our output reports, whether it's a chart or a table. So first and foremost, the title must be there. What you are displaying, a title, it must be there. You can place it right at the bottom, usually where we place the label of the figure. ফিগার লেবেল যে জায়গাটায় বসে ওখানে রাখতে পারো, অথবা টপ মিডলে রাখতে পারো, wherever the title should be there and clear what this output is, should communicate that to the user. Date and timestamp should be there. Not always anymore. This used to be the case, but right nowadays it's more like if applicable, date and timestamp. If applicable, then you have that displayed. If not, then not. For example, let's say for example, user at a certain semester range data from the, let's say starting from summer 19 to let's say autumn 2021, they want to see all the data. Okay, so summer 19 থেকে autumn 2021 পর্যন্ত. So আমার output title to থাকতে হবে. Also somewhere it should let the user know that this is all the data from summer 19 to autumn 2021. The time range, all right? যে কবে থেকে কবের জন্য হচ্ছে এই ডেটাটা দেখানো হচ্ছে, right? And then segmenting the output so that it is represented in a more meaningful manner. Groups of fields that are related with each other, belong together, should be kept together, and so on, all right? And labeling every single field and every single column, obviously. And on that note, while you're labeling, if you're using any sort of abbreviation or if there is any acronym there, once again, you must have legends that explain what that acronym stands for, okay? So once again, that circle, and inside the circle you have the I and that information button. Information button ta thaka uchit, all right? Whenever you use any sort of short form. Okay. And the entire output report should be very easy to navigate, all right? So navigation যখন আসছে তখন ওই যে আমরা যে flow নিয়ে কথা বলছিলাম, flow এর বিষয়টাও আসে যে what comes after what, having related fields together. If there are multiple pages, letting the user scroll through multiple pages, and also always allowing the user to know where they are for easy navigation. And another thing, we've talked about this as well, avoiding terms that the user is unfamiliar with, computer jargons or error messages. Always display in such a manner that is easily understandable to the user. Okay, and one last thing, the amount of information you're presenting in the output report. Only those things that you must present. Must present. Anything extra that you should have there but doesn't necessarily need to be a part of the output report, you can have that, let's say, as a pop-up. All right, a pop-up dialog box or something like that. যে কোনো একটা জায়গায় এররের কোনো পসিবিলিটি আছে বা কোনো একটা জায়গায় added information দিতে হবে, information button আছে, you could have that using a pop-up dialog box, but doesn't need to be a part of the original report, because we don't want to overwhelm the user with too much information. It should be clean, only the information that the user must have or will absolutely need to make any sense out of the output. Ar baki sob kichu hocche giye, if it should be there, then you can have the user expand further and have a pop-up dialog box or something like that, go to a more detailed tab or something like that, navigate into a more detailed output. You can have those options, but the original output report should only contain things that must be there for that output to make sense at all. Everything else, find a way out. Okay. So information should be such that the output report remains clean and not overwhelming for the user. Not too much information, that is. Right then, the process is very similar to how we design our input forms as well here. So figuring out what the outputs will be and figuring out the logical requirements to those outputs. And once you figure out the logical requirements, you figure out the physical output requirements. That is based on the logical requirements, which tables do we need to go to? Kon table theke ki data fetch korte hobe, figuring that out. All right? And then design the output reports or their output forms and so on, and then prototype. As simple as that. After prototyping, simply map. যে আমি দেখতে পাচ্ছি ফার্স্ট দেখতে পাচ্ছি ফার্স্ট লেয়ার কি ডিবিএমএস, ফার্স্ট লেয়ার হচ্ছে কি ডিবিএমএস, এসকিউএল ডিবিএমএস এক্সিকিউট করে দেখলাম যে আমি যে ডেটাটা চাচ্ছিলাম ওই ডেটাটা আমাকে ডেটাবেস থেকে দেয়া হচ্ছে কিনা। দ্যাটস দ্য ফার্স্ট লেয়ার অফ প্রোটোটাইপিং, দ্য ফার্স্ট লেভেল অফ প্রোটোটাইপিং। ডিবিএমএস কি আমি জাস্ট এসকিউএলটা এক্সিকিউট করব, রান করে দেখবো আমার ডেটাকে আমি পাচ্ছি কিনা, গেল। এরপর আমি আমার ব্যাকএন্ড থেকে কোয়েরি পাঠাবো। ব্যাকএন্ড থেকে কোয়েরি পাঠিয়ে দেখবো যে আমার ব্যাকএন্ড ডেটাটা পাচ্ছে কিনা। ঠিক আছে, আমার অ্যাপ্লিকেশন থেকে ডাটাবেসে কোয়েরিটা পাঠাবো গেল। Once we're done with that, then we use our frameworks templating engine, or if you use a front-end framework for that like React or Angular, sure, those either as well work as well. For example, Django যদি ইউজ করে থাকে, Django নিজস্ব টেমপ্লেটিং ইঞ্জিন আছে, ওটা ইউজ করে আমি এখন দেখবো যে আমি যে ডেটাটা আমি পাচ্ছি এখন আমার অ্যাপ্লিকেশনে, ওই ডেটাটা আমি কিভাবে ইন্টারফেসে ডিসপ্লে করব। The moment I display it in the interface, most of my work is done, and then I refine যে ইন্টারফেসে যে ডিসপ্লে করছি ওটার বেটার ওয়েতে কিভাবে ডিসপ্লে করা যায়, and therein comes our output design, the design itself, how to organize the data, what data to keep in the screen, what data to not keep in the screen, how to decide on the flow of the data, right? Where to place what data. So logical data structure for output requirements, figuring out the output requirements, very similar to what we use for input as well. Let's say, for example, like the invoice display করব, invoice display করার জন্য আমার কি কি display করা লাগবে, just figuring that out. Plain and simple, just একটা invoice display করার জন্য কি কি display করা লাগবে, invoice number লাগবে, invoice date লাগবে, customer number, name, blah 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 and so on, customer billing address, as you can see once again here. Let's say the service details, all right? There could be one single service. The invoice could be for a single service or multiple services. So however many services there were in this one invoice, সবগুলো লিস্ট করা, একটা থাকলে একটা, যদি দুটো থাকে দুটোটা লিস্ট করা, তিনটা থাকলে তিনটা, and so on. And the rest of the details that you must include in an invoice. And then a default credit card number, optional. So যখনই অপশনাল হবে তখন আমাকে ফিগার আউট করতে হবে যে অপশনাল হলে এটাকে আমি কি করব। এটাকে মেবি আমি মিনিমাইজ করে রাখবো, if the user wants to see তাহলে তারা দেখতে পারবে, ঠিক আছে। or যদি লাগে তখন দেখানো যাবে যে ডিফল্ট ক্রেডিট নাম্বার কার্ড নাম্বার হচ্ছে কি অপশনাল। সো এটা হচ্ছে কি আমি কেস টু কেস ভ্যারি করব। in some cases I might not have to display it, in some cases I might have to display it or have the user expand upon it, all right? And then along with the default credit card number, giving the user the option to select whether they want to see a credit message or a payment message. This square brace here in the logical data structure represents selection. That is, এটা হচ্ছে কি এমন একটা জিনিস যেটা হচ্ছে user select করতে পারবে। It's an output form, but the user can choose whether they want to see a credit message, whether they want to receive a credit message or a payment message, or view of the credit message or the payment message. So these are once again optional. So minimize করে থাকা থাকবে, and then expand করলে user can select credit message and payment message, and upon selecting whichever they can view that, and so on, right? So very similar to the input logical data structure. You don't have to do this for your project. It's not a mandatory thing, but if you do, it's more organized. The data structure to figure out করার পরে আমরা কি করব, physical requirements, physical output requirements, that is invoice number, date, কোত্থেকে পাবো, কিভাবে ফেচ করব, কাস্টমার নাম্বার, নেম, কাস্টমার বিলিং অ্যাড্রেস কোত্থেকে পাবো, কিভাবে ফেচ করব, previous balance due, how do we calculate that, where do we get it from, payments received and so on, সবগুলো হচ্ছে কি ফিগার আউট করা যে কিভাবে জেনারেট করব। ইন্টারেস্ট চার্জেস কি কোনো টেবিলে আছে নাকি আমার জেনারেট করতে হবে। নিউ ব্যালেন্স ডিউ, ইজ ইট দেয়ার ইন এনি টেবল অর ডু আই হ্যাভ টু ক্যালকুলেট ইট এন্ড দেন জেনারেট, হাউ ডু আই ডু দ্যাট দেন। সো এই জিনিসগুলো ফিগার আউট করা ইজিয়ার হয় ওয়ান্স ইউ হ্যাভ দ্য থিংস লিস্টেড। আউটপুটে আমার কি কি দেখাতে হবে এটা আমি যদি একবার লিস্ট করে ফেলার পরে জিনিসটা হচ্ছে একটু ইজিয়ার হয় যে আমি কোনটা কোত্থেকে আনবো এটা ফিগার আউট করাটা। Otherwise it will seem haphazard to you to keep track of what are the things that you need to do your output report. Okay. Some of the principles that you should follow when designing an output report. So with regards to page size, there is a certain page size that is applicable for printed formats, all right? So you don't have to worry too much about it because print niye amra khub ekta worry korbo na, but since we might have the option, maybe give that a thought. But আমাদের খুব একটা বেশি চিন্তা করতে হবে না বিকজ আমাদের মেইন কনসার্ন এখানে হচ্ছে কি স্ক্রিন আউটপুটটা, ঠিক আছে। আর স্ক্রিন আউটপুটের ক্ষেত্রে পেজ সাইজ, when it comes to page size, what we think of is the lowest common denominator in terms of screen size. So the default window size when you print out your output, in your mind it should be equal to the lowest possible resolution or the worst resolution display in the user community. Lowest possible resolution display কিসে হতে পারে, figuring that out and designing your output report in such a manner that even there will be no issue for the user to view the output report. So when it comes to the size, you have to think about that. Okay. Right then. Some of the other things, the orientation of the page, whether portrait or landscape. So এখানে বলছে যে often portrait orientation is often prepared. You can ignore that, completely ignore that. এটা depend করে purely হচ্ছে গিয়ে on the number of columns that you have in the table. If the table has a lot of rows and not many columns, then portrait orientation. If it has a lot of columns, like the tally sheet, let's say, then landscape orientation. Once again, for our case, it all ties back to the screen size. So আমাদের landscape portrait এটাও আমাদের জন্য খুব একটা ম্যাটার করে না, কারণ আমাদের মেইন ফোকাস হচ্ছে স্ক্রিন আউটপুট। সো আমরা হচ্ছে কি জাস্ট চিন্তা করবো সাইজের কথা, যে টেবিলটা আমার সাইজের মধ্যে ফিট করছে কিনা, অ্যাজ সিম্পল এজ দ্যাট। ঠিক আছে, আবার ওখানে একটা জিনিস মাথায় রাখতে হবে, ফিট করাতে গিয়ে if it's too zoomed out, that is the user cannot read anything, then that's a problem as well. ওই জায়গাটা আমরা স্ক্রোলিং এর অপশন রাখতে পারি। লেটস সে ফর এক্সাম্পল আমাদের হচ্ছে কি কলামের নাম্বার অনেকগুলো, ঠিক আছে, এখন আমি পুরাটা জিনিস যদি একটা স্ক্রিনের মধ্যে আটাতে চাই লোয়েস্ট রেজলিউশন মাথায় রেখে, তখন এটা তো ভিজিবলি হবে না। থিংক অ্যাবাউট ইট, ট্যালি শীট, the whole thing, all the columns included as a whole, if you were to view that using your phone, can you read anything at all? The tally sheet? No, you can't. So তখন আমার কি মাথায় রাখতে হবে? Scrolling. As simple as that. So scrolling এর অপশন রাখবো যে ইউজারের জন্য যে size ties back to the size, the lowest common denominator, and for the lowest or the worst resolution display, whether the user can view the data or read the data or not. Readable কিনা ডেটা, এই জিনিসটা মাথায় রেখে যদি স্ক্রোল করা নেসেসারি হয় লেফট টু রাইট, তাহলে লেফট টু রাইট স্ক্রোলিং এর অপশন রাখবো। টপ টু বটম স্ক্রোলিং করা নেসেসারি, টপ টু বটম স্ক্রোলিং করার অপশন রাখবো। And then comes navigation. Very important when you have a large table, in the sense that excuse me, if the table has a lot of columns, all right, so either scrolling rackbo or let's say multiple pages where the user can go through pages. And while you do that, when we have multiple pages, when we have the output divided up into pages, or it's too large that the user has to scroll, always giving a sense to the user regarding where they are right now. It's very important in that case. Echharao ache, but that. So see here, for example, when we are doing this, so see here, I have the option of going back, going next to easy navigation here. And I can also, most importantly, see where I am right now, all right? In this screen, within this screen. So same goes for your output reports as well. If there are multiple pages to that, then right at the bottom, letting the user know on which page they are right now, whether they can go back, if there are any previous pages at all, if there are any next pages at all, all right? For example, when they're at the last page, then our next stage, a greater than arrow that will go away, all right? The arrow that points towards the right to show us that we can go to the next page, that will go away. And that's what makes sense, to communicate to the user that this is the last page. Say ধরনের navigation রাখা, ঠিক আছে? Even without these things, letting the user know always where they are. In the sense that, let's say, whichever output we're displaying, what it is, what output it is, how they can go back to the main screen. All right. And also when it comes to navigation, maybe it'll help you to study, let's say, popular platforms, all right? Je okhane navigation kisher pore ki ashe usually, all right? So let's say, for example, the moment you log in, what is the first thing that you expect to see in any website or in any web app? Login করার সাথে সাথে first কোন জিনিসটা, what do you expect to see?
Dashboard. It's the home page.
Dashboard or the home page. That's right. Why is that? That's what you're used to it, right? So that's what you should use as well. So login করার পরে তুমি যদি automatically userকে কোনো একটা random একটা output chart নিয়ে যাও, the user will be confused, as would you guys. Think about that. Profile page নিলেও it's a bit confusing. So the first thing you should always go to is the homepage or the dashboard. There are sometimes some exceptions to that, but usually safest way out is to go with the common let's say procedures or common platform যেটা করা হয় ওই জিনিসটা ইউজ করে আমরা আমাদের নিজেদের সিস্টেম ওভাবে ডিজাইন করতে পারি। লগ ইন করে ফার্স্ট থিং দে উইল সি ইজ ড্যাশবোর্ড। এখন ড্যাশবোর্ড থেকে অন্যান্য আউটপুট গুলোতে ন্যাভিগেশন ওখানেও হচ্ছে আমাদের চিন্তা করতে হবে how to make that easy for the user. Similar type of output charts ওগুলোর বাটন একসাথে এক জায়গায় রাখবো and also make them very visible, all right, very easy to understand and work with. So keeping those things in mind when it comes to navigation. Partitioning. So once again, remember that I don't want to overwhelm the user with information. And if there are a lot of information in the output form, segment it, group them. For example, here, control breaks. So here, this represents a group of data, this represents another group of data. So there is a bit of segmentation. It আমার জন্য clear কেন যে এই গ্রুপকে এই গ্রুপ আর এই গ্রুপের মাঝে আমি একটা স্পেস রেখেছি, so it's clear to me. So having that in place and segmenting like that at least. And if it's possible to leave out the data from the original output form or output report and give the user an option to go to the detailed output or expand upon the output or click on a button and see that as a pop-up dialog box, use that. So frame within a frame basically. আমার একটা output report আছে অথবা output form আছে, whatever you call it, you have the frame there and the user, if they want to see the details of, let's say, the address, okay, address details যদি দেখতে চাই অথবা let's say credit card number এইসব selection option যদি দেখতে চাই, সে কোন একটা button press করতে পারে and then as a pop-up these things will appear. Or in a new window, more detailed, a new tab, let's say, more detailed output report will be displayed. But the first one will have as little amount of information as you can go by. Highlighting parts where you want the user's attention. For example, wherever there is an error, the user clicks on a certain output, wants to see a certain output or whatever, and then we output something is missing or there is a problem. Or let's say, for example, output form দেখার জন্য তো আমরা user থেকে কিছু input নেই, তাই না? We've talked about it. For generating some types of output charts, you need to get some inputs from the user. Which schools, let's say, or which departments, or what is the semester range for which they want to see the data. So ওখানে যদি কোনো error থাকে, highlighting to bring the user's attention to what the error is, all right? However, when you use highlighting, you should be careful because you should not use highlighting within the output report itself if it doesn't represent an exception. Otherwise, it could be confusing or misleading for the user, all right? And finally, printing or emailing, as goes the trend nowadays, you should always, by default, provide an option to the user to print out the data or email the data that they see on the screen. Some of the other things as well. The format, all right? Store করা হয় একটা certain format, but আমি ওই format যে display করব তা কিন্তু না। তোমার date হতেই পারে যে তুমি এই format store করছো 02/27/2004, where the first two digits represent February, the month, the digits in the middle, the two digits in the middle, 27, represent the date, and 2004 represents the year. But I'm the user can display kori, it will, we can assume that it will not make sense to the user, or it will make sense only to a selection of users. Should never have that. So whatever format you use to store the data, user ke present korar shomoy, it has to be meaningful, it has to be represented in a meaningful way. A phone number, for example, you just store it as 1 2 3 4 5 6 without any spacing or whatever. But when you display it to the user, you display with proper spaces, proper spacings, right? প্রথমটা চারটা ডিজিট আমি আলাদা রাখবো, ওকে, and then পরের গুলো আলাদা রাখবো, আর মাঝখানে একটা হাইফেন দিয়ে আলাদা করে রাখবো, okay? For extensions as well, we provide parentheses for that. যেটা আমার database নেই maybe, but display করতে হবে কিন্তু এইভাবে। Right. and legend is a কথা তো বলেছি, so yeah, that. Okay, so for example, what we were talking about with pop-up, so let's say for example this is the output of a very backdated output report. You will, as you must have seen already, most modern output reports are designed even better. Let's just use this example just to figure out the idea of a pop-up. So let's say, for example, if the user wants to see a preview, all right? এটা কি আমার যে আউটপুটটা ছিল, the original output form or the original output that I'm displaying to the user, ওখানের মধ্যেই embedded রাখবো? No. The option could be there. The option could be there somewhere for the user to preview. And then once they click on preview, either they will be navigated to a new tab or there will be a pop-up window that is a new frame, and there they can preview, all right? But not a part of the original output form. So same goes for you guys as well. Some other output chart or something, let's say for example, the basic output report is displayed. When they want to see a more detailed version, the user can choose to see a detailed version. But the first thing that we show to the user is the basic output with not too complicated data, all right? Data representation or information যেটা দেখানো হবে খুব একটা complex কিছু রাখবো না, অনেক বেশি detail রাখবো না, just very simple, right? Let's say for example when they want to see the revenue output charts যে আমরা দেখেছি না কয়েকটা, যে ওগুলো হচ্ছে কি দেখতে চাচ্ছে তারা, let's say স্কুলের জন্য, ঠিক আছে, ওভারঅল স্কুলগুলো কম্প্যারিজন, ঠিক আছে? এখন তুমি স্কুলগুলোর কম্প্যারিজনের জন্য চারটা দেখালা, ফাইন। এরপরে স্কুলের ভিতরে ডিপার্টমেন্টের কম্প্যারিজন আমি কি সাথে সাথে একই সাথে দেখাবো? না, ওটার জন্য আলাদাভাবে ইউজার সিলেক্ট করতে পারে, অথবা আমি একটা অপশন রাখলাম স্কুলের যে চারটা আছে ওখানের মধ্যে স্কুলগুলো কোনো একটা উপর ক্লিক করলে আরেকটা ট্যাবে অথবা একটা পপ আপে হচ্ছে, অথবা নতুন একটা স্ক্রিন আউটপুটে দেখানো হবে যে স্কুল ওয়াইজ ডিপার্টমেন্ট ওয়াইজ কম্প্যারিজন উইদিন আ গিভেন স্কুল, রাইট? আর স্কুলের কম্প্যারিজনটা দেখানো হবে, স্কুলের প্রত্যেকটা স্কুলের ভিতরে আবার ডিপার্টমেন্টের কম্প্যারিজনটাও দেখানো হবে। এই ধরনের ডিটেইল মোর কমপ্লেক্স আউটপুট যদি দেখাতে চাই তখন হচ্ছে কি ইউজারকে অপশন দিতে পারি ওদিকে যাওয়ার, and once the user chooses that option we can display that to them, but initially preliminarily the output report should be simpler, only containing the information that we must display to the user in order to make sense. Okay, any questions?
No, miss.
No, ma'am.
Right then, so do you guys see that there is a pop quiz already visible to you guys in the classroom? In your classwork tab for
Yes, ma'am.
this course, the theory counterpart, by the way, not the lab. Lab na theory jono classwork tab under SQL pop quiz paba. Please click on the form and go to that form. You will not be able to see the form yet, so no need to panic. Also, you see that there is a homework, certain homework that I will make visible very soon, all right? So এই হোমওয়ার্কটা কি এটা বলে নি, এই হোমওয়ার্কটা হচ্ছে কি বেসিক্যালি যে আমাদের অলরেডি শেয়ার করা পাব ডাটাবেসে যে এক্সারসাইজটা আছে, দ্যাটস নট দি হোমওয়ার্ক, ইয়া দিস হ্যাঁ। সো পাব ডাটাবেসে যে এক্সারসাইজটা অলরেডি শেয়ার করা হয়েছে অনেক শুরুতে, অনেক আগে তোমাদের সাথে, ওটা হচ্ছে কি আই ওয়ান্ট ইউ গাইজ টু ফিনিশ ওয়ার্কিং অন দ্যাট ইফ ইউ হ্যাভেন্ট অলরেডি, and write the query for all of these and submit that basically, right? So এটার possible solution ও হচ্ছে কি I think I'm not sure that's no that's a different set of problems. So yeah, so please work on these two files, all right? So এখানের মধ্যে অনেকগুলো SQL query আছে, এই query গুলোর command তোমাদেরকে basically লিখতে হবে, all right? এই যে এখানেও there are two files by the way, ঠিক আছে, দুইটা ফাইল আছে, so দোনোটার SQL query গুলো please kindly make sure that you write the queries to those and submit the work, right? Okay, I'll make that visible by the end of today. So, and the deadline for that would be, I think, yeah, this weekend. I can give you this weekend for that. Nikki, next class. Can you guys do this within the next class? Within Tuesday, let's say? Would you be able to finish this within next Tuesday? Sorry, next Wednesday? That's the after tomorrow.
We have other also classes.
No, miss. I think give us the weekend. That would be better.
Okay, all right. So the weekend it is. But once again, if you want to copy, you can go ahead and copy. But ask yourselves what you're doing in this course. All right. So when I would highly recommend that you act maturely and try these things out on your own. ঠিক আছে? Because exam হচ্ছে গিয়ে, remember, exam এ প্রত্যেকটা স্কেলের জন্য আলাদা আলাদা টাইম থাকে। It's not going to be like যে SQL হচ্ছে গিয়ে 7টা প্রবলেম তোমাকে 1 ঘন্টা দিলাম সলভ করার। No. Per SQL problem, you will get 5 minutes to write the SQL command. Within those 5 minutes, you have to write the SQL command. And for that, you need ample amount of practice. And that wouldn't work if you didn't work on this set on your own. If you struggle, definitely group brainstorming sessions korte paro or group study sessions korte paro. But try to figure it out on your own, or at least understand what's going on here, right? Or what the correct command should be for the given query, okay? Now then, please go to the pop quiz. Did everyone find the pop quiz all right? সবাই কি পেয়েছো? ফর্মটা কি পেয়েছো?
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not open though.
Right. Okay, I'm still recording, by the way. Let me just stop the recording. Yeah, it's not open yet. I will open it.